The day Soren Kingsley stumbled into the wrong hotel, his $1,000 shoes were soaked from a New York downpour, and his patience was hanging by a thread. "This isn't the Fairline?" he asked, brows furrowed as he scanned the unassuming lobby that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and coffee beans. "Nope," the receptionist said, not even glancing up from her computer. "This is the Halston Inn, 2 blocks south of Fairline." Common mistake. That made him pause. He wasn't used to being dismissed, not in meetings, not in boardrooms, and definitely not in lobbies. But then she looked up, and everything shifted. She had a name tag that said Odessa Clark, a messy ponytail, and the kind of eyes that made you forget what you were saying. Warm, curious, and a little bit tired, like she worked too much and loved too hard. "I'll call a car," she added, reaching for the desk phone. Soren stepped forward. "Wait," Odessa blinked. "Wait." He was still shaking water from his coat, but something about her voice, low and real, had sliced through the noise of his day. "It's raining like hell out there," he said. "You got any rooms left?" Odessa stared. "You want to stay here?" "Sir, the Fairline's 5-star. This place barely does continental breakfast." "I'm not hungry," he said. "Just tired and already here." She raised an eyebrow. "You're gonna regret this." He didn't. Not even a little. The Halston Inn was old, the walls thin, the elevators slow. But Soren didn't care. For the first time in weeks, the silence in his head wasn't filled with meetings and money and mergers. It was filled with the sound of Odessa laughing when he asked if the vending machine took cards. By day 2, he learned her shift started at 7 in the morning. By day 3, he started showing up in the lobby at 7:05 with the faulty key card he kept pretending was broken. "You again," she said, arms crossed, lips curving. "You're the only one who knows how to fix it," he replied. "Right," she said, not believing him for a second. But she reset it anyway and offered him coffee. And once a blueberry muffin, she said, was technically expired but still good if you're brave. He took it and grinned. "I'm brave." She didn't ask what he did for a living. She didn't ask why a guy in a Rolex was staying in a hotel with flickering hallway lights and mismatched hallway carpet. And that was new. That was refreshing. Soren didn't tell her that his face was on the cover of Forbes last year. That his company, Kingsley Dynamics, had just closed a deal worth $80 million. That his penthouse had a view of the Chrysler Building and a wine cellar he hadn't stepped into in months. He told her he liked her coffee better than the Fairline's, that her sarcasm was better than room service. That he hadn't slept this well in weeks. Odessa, for her part, didn't know what to make of him. He was definitely not normal Halston Inn clientele. His shirts were always crisp, his watch probably cost more than her car, and he tipped like it was his last day on Earth. But he also listened. Really listened. "So what's your deal?" she asked one night when he was sitting on the worn leather couch in the lobby, sipping the gross vending machine tea like it was champagne. "My deal. Yeah, you don't look like someone who belongs here." He looked at her for a moment. "Maybe I needed to not belong, just for a bit." She tilted her head. "That makes no sense." "Exactly," he said and smiled. Later that night, after she'd clocked out, she found him sitting outside under the hotel's dripping awning. "You waiting on a car?" she asked. "No." "Just waiting." "For you." Odessa narrowed her eyes. "You do realize I'm not room service, right?" He laughed. "I know." She hesitated. "You really don't want to go back to wherever you came from?" Soren looked at her, rain misting in his hair, eyes steady. "Not yet." Something about the way he said it made her heart beat a little faster. The next morning, he wasn't in the lobby, or the next. Her chest felt tight, stupidly so. She told herself he probably just went back to his real hotel, probably got tired of expired muffins and broken keycards. On the third morning, she walked in and froze. A bouquet of deep red roses, at least 30 of them, sat on the counter. No card. She looked up and found him leaning against the wall, arms casually crossed. "I missed your coffee," he said. "You could have left a note," she said, cheeks flushing. "I thought flowers might say it better," she blinked. "You're ridiculous." He stepped closer. "You're beautiful." Her breath caught, and then he said it. "Have dinner with me." She opened her mouth, then closed it. "You don't even know me." "I know you're kind, funny." Smarter than anyone I've met in a long time, and I know I feel better when I'm near you. She stared at him. You're serious, he nodded. Completely? She chewed on her lip. I get off at 8, he smiled. I'll be waiting, and he was. In a sleek black town car with leather seats and a driver who opened her door like she was royalty. Soren, she whispered, eyes wide. This is, wow, he looked at her, suddenly nervous. Too much? No, she said, just unexpected. The restaurant had gold chandeliers and menus without prices. He ordered her wine she couldn't pronounce and dessert that came with a sparkler in it. But the best part was when he reached for her hand across the table and said, I've been around a lot of people who want things from me. You're the first one who didn't. I didn't even know what you had, she said honestly. He gave her a look. Still want to know? No, she said softly. I like you better this way. They drove back to the hotel in silence, fingers laced. She stopped him in front of the doors. This was really nice. I want to do it again, he said. She looked up at him. Why me? He leaned in, his voice low. Because you see me, not the money, not the name, just me. And then he kissed her, not a rushed kiss, not a desperate one. A kiss that said he hadn't just checked into the wrong hotel, he'd found exactly where he was supposed to be. The morning after their dinner, Odessa walked into the Halston Inn with her heart doing odd things inside her chest. She wasn't the kind of girl who got whisked off to rooftop restaurants with violinists playing in the corner and velvet chairs that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. But she had been, because of him. And now, with the late September sun filtering through the dusty front windows, she saw him again, already seated in the lobby, flipping through a newspaper like he hadn't just turned her world on its side the night before. You're early, she said, setting her bag behind the desk. I didn't sleep, he replied, folding the paper neatly. Didn't want to miss you. Odessa gave him a look. You could have just slept in and caught me at lunch. I don't like waiting, he said, then paused. Except for you. She didn't have time to process how that made her feel because the phone rang and 2 guests wandered in asking about towels. But all morning she could feel him watching her, not in a possessive way, just quietly attentive. Like he was memorizing the way she moved, the way she spoke to guests, the way she tucked a pen behind her ear when she needed both hands. By the time her break rolled around, he was already holding out a paper cup of coffee from the cafe 2 blocks away. It's not the vending machine tea, he said, but I figured you deserved something better. She took it warily. How do you know how I take it? 2 sugars. No cream, he said. You muttered it once under your breath when pouring the last cup from the lobby pot. Odessa stared at him. You remember that? I remember everything you say. She didn't know how to respond to that, so she just sipped the coffee and sat beside him on the couch. The silence wasn't awkward, it was full, like something was growing in it. After a long moment, she said, So what do you actually do? He didn't flinch. I own a company that builds aerospace navigation systems. She blinked. You mean like satellites and propulsion design? We're contracted with half the major airlines and a few federal agencies. Odessa let out a low whistle. Okay, so you're not just rich, you're rocket science rich, Soren laughed. I suppose that's accurate. Why didn't you just say that the first day? Because you looked at me like I wasn't a paycheck, and I didn't want that to change. She glanced at him. It wouldn't have. But I get it. They sat quietly for a beat before she added, You still haven't told me why you were at the wrong hotel. His expression shifted. There was a board meeting that morning, one I didn't want to go to. I left early and told the driver to take me somewhere quiet. He dropped me here. You could have left, she said. I almost did. Then you asked if I wanted a map or coffee, and I didn't want to leave anymore. The shift in her chest was subtle but undeniable. Later that day, Odessa walked out of the break room and saw a man in a tailored charcoal suit standing at the front desk. He looked like he belonged in a courtroom or a boardroom, not in the Halston Inn. I'm looking for Mr. Kingsley, the man said. Is he in? Odessa frowned. He doesn't have any meetings scheduled here. I'm not with a meeting, I'm his legal counsel. Soren appeared behind her, hands in his pockets. What is it, Darren? You've missed 2 days of acquisition talks. The Tokyo board is threatening to pull out. I told you I'm taking a few days. Darren's jaw tightened. You didn't tell anyone where you were. I'm here. The lawyer's gaze shifted to Odessa and something cold flickered there. Right. I see. Odessa felt the change in the air like a storm rolling in. Soren nodded toward the hallway. Give me a minute, will you? Darren left without another word. When they were alone, Odessa crossed her arms. So you're not just rich. Your corporate empire rich. I didn't lie, he said quietly. No, but you didn't exactly volunteer the fact that you're apparently important enough for Tokyo to threaten you either. I didn't want that to get in the way. In the way of what? Soren stepped closer. This. Us? Odessa's voice was low. I'm not part of your world. I know, he said, and I like that. Why? Because my world is full of people who want something. You don't. She looked away. Maybe I do, he tilted his head. What? I want to feel like I matter, she said. Not because I answered your calls or brought you coffee or smiled at the right moment, but because I'm enough, just me. Soren's eyes softened. You already are. That night, he didn't leave the hotel. He didn't go back to his penthouse or take any calls from Tokyo. He found her sitting on the back steps near the alley where she sometimes went to breathe after long shifts. You okay? He asked. She shrugged. Just thinking. About, she gave him a sideways glance. You, me, how none of this makes sense. It doesn't have to, he said. It just has to feel right. She hesitated. You're going to leave eventually, he didn't lie. Probably. And I'm just someone who signs off keycards and refills the cereal bar. You're not, he said firmly. You're the only part of my day that feels real. She didn't answer. But she didn't walk away either. Instead, she reached for his hand. The next week was a blur. He stayed at the Halston, even when the hot water gave out one morning. They shared late-night walks, early morning coffee runs, and long talks that made her laugh in ways she hadn't in years. But reality crept in. One afternoon, she found him in the lobby staring at his phone. The screen showed a news site with his face on it. The headline read, Kingsley missing from strategic talks, rumors of romance swirl. She didn't say anything, just waited. He looked up. It's starting. What is? The world I've been avoiding. It's knocking. Odessa folded her arms. What happens now? I go back. And me, he stood. You come with me, her breath caught. Soren, I want you there with me. In my life. I can't just leave everything. Why not? Because my life isn't a blank page. I have bills, a lease, a cat. I'll cover the bills, we'll move the cat. She stared at him. You can't just buy your way out of everything. I'm not trying to buy anything. I'm trying to ask you to take a chance. She hesitated. And if I say no, he stepped closer. Then I'll go, but I won't stop thinking about you. She didn't answer right away. Her heart was pounding. Her world was tilting. Finally, she whispered, Give me until tomorrow. That night, she stood in the quiet of her apartment, staring at the suitcase on her bed. Her cat meowed lazily from the windowsill. She thought about the way Soren looked at her like she was the only thing that made sense in a world full of chaos. She didn't sleep. At sunrise, she walked into the lobby. He was already waiting. Well, he asked. Odessa took a deep breath. Where are we going first? The private jet didn't impress Odessa. What caught her attention was that Soren had remembered to bring her cat, tucked in a soft carrier beside her seat, purring contentedly like it belonged in the clouds. He had arranged everything without fuss. Her lease settled, her notice at the Halston in respectfully tendered, and her few belongings already relocated to a new address in Manhattan. But it wasn't the penthouse she'd expected. You're not taking me to your tower in the sky, she asked, glancing out the jet's oval window as the city skyline came into view. I thought you might prefer something with character, Soren said, watching her reaction. She turned to him. You gave up your penthouse. No, he said. But I bought a brownstone in West Village for us if you want it. Odessa blinked. You bought a house in less than a week. It had good bones. Like you said, I'm brave. She stared at him, half in disbelief, half in something warmer. You're impossible. But charming, he added. Debatable, she muttered. The brownstone was 3 stories of exposed brick, iron-railed staircases, and warm oak floors polished to a glow. The kitchen had retro charm, the living room opened to a garden terrace, and the bedroom windows looked out over tree-lined streets that felt more like a storybook than a city. There was a vase of calla lilies waiting on the mantel. "I didn't know your favorite flower," he said, following her gaze. "They are now." He didn't press her to unpack. He didn't hover. He let her walk the space, touch the walls, breathe in the life she wasn't expecting. When she finally came back downstairs, he was waiting in the garden with 2 glasses of wine and a small plate of olives and manchego. "Why do I feel like I fell into someone else's life?" she asked, settling beside him on the garden bench. "Because this isn't someone else's," he said. "It's yours now, too." Odessa stared at the glass in her hand. "This is all moving fast, I know. I'm not used to fast. My life's been slow and careful." "I won't rush you," he said softly. "But I won't lie, I want you here with me." She didn't answer, but she didn't move away either. Over the next few days, Odessa discovered a new rhythm. Soren left each morning before sunrise, dressed in tailored suits with expressions she was still learning to read. But he always left a small note on the kitchen counter, something simple. A quote, a line from a song, once just a doodle of a coffee cup with a heart. She didn't tell him she saved them all in a drawer. Her new world was filled with names and places she didn't know. He took her to a gallery opening where a woman with diamond earrings the size of grapes asked what Odessa did before, and Odessa answered, "I lived." Another night, they attended a charity auction in the ballroom of the Astoria. Odessa wore a deep blue gown that Soren had someone deliver in a box with a handwritten card that just said, "Wear this. I want to see you shine." At the event, a man with salt and pepper hair leaned in and said to Soren, "Didn't know you were dating now." "Thought you'd sworn off anything not merger-related." Soren simply replied, "I found something better than a merger." But not everything was glitter and champagne. One evening, Odessa wandered into the kitchen to find Soren sitting at the island counter, his tie loosened, his laptop open, and his jaw clenched. "You're home late," she said cautiously. He didn't look up. "The Tokyo deal collapsed." "They pulled out." "I thought that was already resolved." "It was, until someone leaked internal reports. I have to start from scratch, and the board's restless." She walked over, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Can I do anything?" He covered her hand with his. "Just stay. I'm not going anywhere." But the pressure didn't let up. Meetings ran longer. His phone buzzed constantly. Some nights he didn't come home until after midnight, and when he did, he barely spoke. Odessa didn't push, but the silence started to hurt. One morning she found him in the home office, staring at 3 monitors filled with graphs and contracts. His coffee was cold. "I barely see you anymore," she said. "I know, I'm trying to fix it." "Are you?" He looked up sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I didn't follow you here to become invisible." Soren stood. "I'm doing this for us." "I didn't ask for this," she replied, voice rising. "I never asked for a brownstone or private dinners or silk gowns. I asked for you. The man who laughed at broken vending machines and remembered how I take my coffee. You think I've changed. I think you've gone back to the man who forgot how to breathe." The words hung there, heavy. "True," he exhaled slowly. "I don't know how to balance it. I've always been all in or all out, but I don't want to lose you. Then stop treating me like a guest in your life." That night, he didn't work. He turned off his phone. He made her dinner pasta he overcooked slightly and garlic bread that was too salty, but she laughed anyway. They sat on the floor of the living room, eating from mismatched plates while the cat tried to steal a noodle. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I keep trying to fix everything with money, and I know that's not what you need." "I need presents, not presents," she said. Noted. The next morning she woke to a quiet house, no note on the counter, no scent of coffee. She panicked for a moment until she opened the back door and found him in the garden, still in pajamas, planting something in the flower bed. "Are you gardening?" "I Googled it last night." "Apparently it's therapeutic." She kneeled beside him. "What are you planting?" "Time, because we never seem to have enough," she groaned. "That's terrible," he grinned. "But it got you to laugh." Later that week, he asked her to come with him to a foundation event he was organizing. Not a gala, not a black tie affair. A community center fundraiser in Harlem that his company had quietly supported for years. "I want you to see another side of my world," he said. The space was filled with kids, murals, music. Soren moved through the rooms like someone who had earned his place not with power but with consistency. The staff knew him. The children ran to him, and Odessa saw something she hadn't before. "You built this?" she asked, watching a teen proudly show off his robotics project. "I funded it." "They built it? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wasn't sure if I wanted you to see that part of me yet." "What part?" "The part that's scared to care too much." She took his hand. Too late. That night after they returned home, he led her upstairs without a word, not rushed. Not desperate, just sure. He paused in the bedroom, reached into the drawer of his nightstand and pulled out a small velvet box. Odessa froze. "Is that?" He opened it slowly. Inside was a single ring, platinum, understated. A deep blue sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. "I didn't buy this to fix anything," he said. "I bought it because I've never been more certain. You walked into my life by accident, and now I can't imagine it without you." She couldn't breathe. "I'm not asking you to be someone else. I'm asking you to stay exactly as you are, with me." Through the noise, through the quiet, through all of it, he held it out to her. "Will you marry me?" Odessa's heart thundered. She looked at the ring, at him, at everything they'd built in what felt like a blink but carried the weight of something real. "Yes." Her voice was soft but certain. "Yes, I will." He slid the ring onto her finger as if it belonged there, as if it always had. And in that moment, in a quiet brownstone garden with time in the dirt and a cat watching from the window, everything finally made sense. The morning after Odessa said yes, the city felt different. Not louder or busier, just more alive, as if every honking cab and passing breeze was part of something bigger. She stood barefoot on the top floor of the brownstone, staring out the window with the sapphire ring catching the light like a tiny flicker of sunrise. Downstairs, Soren had already started making a mess in the kitchen. The clatter of pans, the hum of the espresso machine, the low murmur of jazz drifting from the speakers, none of it felt out of place. It was chaos, but it was his kind of chaos, and now hers too. She padded down the stairs, stopping just outside the doorway. "You're cooking again?" she asked, folding her arms as she leaned against the frame. He glanced over his shoulder, flour on his cheek. Trying, the eggs revolted. Odessa moved closer, peering into the pan. "That's a scramble, not an uprising." "Could have fooled me," he said, grabbing a spatula. "Sit, I'm making celebratory breakfast." She slid into a stool at the counter and watched him. The quiet concentration on his face, the way his wrist moved as he stirred, there was something strangely grounding about it. As if this domestic, unfiltered, was the real Soren, the one only she got to see. "I told my sister," she said suddenly. He looked up. "About the engagement," she cried. "Then swore she'd break your kneecaps if you hurt me. That's fair." Then she asked if you had any brothers. He laughed. "I don't, just a cousin who lives in Iceland and raises goats. She might be into that." He plated the eggs, slid them across to her, and poured 2 cups of coffee. "So what about your mom?" "I'll tell her today. She'll be cautious. She always is, but she'll come around." Soren hesitated. "And your dad?" "He passed when I was 12. Heart attack." She paused. "He would have liked you, though. Especially if you got the eggs right." "I'll take that as motivation." They ate in comfortable silence. Afterward, he reached for her hand. "There's something I want to show you." She narrowed her eyes. "If it's another townhouse, I swear, no more properties." "I promise." He didn't tell her where they were going, just had a driver pull up in a sleek black SUV and handed her a soft navy coat once they stepped out onto the sidewalk. "You'll need this," he said. The ride took them north, past the familiar bustle of Manhattan into the quieter, leafier streets near in Wood. Then down a narrow road flanked with iron fences and old brick buildings. Finally, the car stopped in front of a modest structure with weathered stone steps and ivy climbing its facade. "What is this?" Odessa asked, stepping out. A project I started 5 years ago, Soren said. Before the money, before the boardrooms, when I was still doing freelance code and sleeping 6 hours a week. She followed him inside where the air smelled faintly of varnished wood and fresh paint. The space opened into a high-ceilinged workshop filled with long tables, soldering stations, drones in various stages of assembly, and a wall of tools arranged with almost surgical precision. "It's a tech mentorship center," he said, "for kids who don't have access to equipment or guidance. I come here when I need to remember why I started anything at all." Odessa walked slowly, running her fingers across a half-built robot. "I've never heard you mention this place. I didn't want to until I knew you'd stay. This is the part of me I don't put in press releases." She turned. "You trust me with this. I trust you with everything." They wandered the space together, and the longer they stayed, the more pieces fell into place. This was the heart behind the empire, the quiet, relentless drive to build something that lasted, not for headlines, for impact. Later that night, back at the brownstone, they curled up on the couch with a blanket and a bowl of popcorn Odessa had burned slightly but insisted added flavor. "I don't want a big wedding," she said, her head on his chest. "Then we won't have one. I mean, I want it to matter, but not the pomp. Just people who love us, maybe in the garden, maybe music, but the kind that doesn't echo off chandeliers. I'll invite the time plant," she chuckled, tracing the edge of his shirt collar. "Do you ever regret it?" "What?" "Everything you've built. What you gave up to get here." He was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes. But then I met you, and it made everything before you feel like a long, quiet wait." The next day, as if the world had been waiting for its cue, the tabloids caught wind of the engagement. A blurry photo of them leaving the mentorship center landed on the front page of an entertainment site. The headline read, "Kingsley's mystery fiancée, who is the woman who stole the millionaire's heart." Odessa stared at the screen over breakfast. "You knew this would happen." "I did," Soren said, not looking up from his newspaper. "We don't have to respond, but they're going to dig. They'll find an ex-receptionist with a degree in hospitality and a penchant for blueberry muffins. And if they keep digging, they'll find someone who makes me a better man." She pushed the tablet aside. "I just don't want to feel like a headline. You never will, not with me." That afternoon, the doorbell rang. Odessa opened it to find a delivery man holding a large white envelope. "For Miss Clark," he said. Inside was a handwritten note from Soren's mother. Odessa had never met her. She lived in London, seldom visited. The note was short but elegant. "Welcome to the family. I hope you know how rare it is for my son to smile the way he does now. You must be extraordinary." Odessa folded the note carefully and slipped it into a drawer beside the others. 2 weeks later, the garden transformed. String lights danced from branch to branch. The flower beds had been freshly turned, the stone path lined with small lanterns. A jazz trio played softly by the ivy wall, and a handful of guests gathered, friends, family, people who mattered. Odessa stood at the top of the staircase in a simple ivory dress, her heart thudding against her ribs as she looked down at the man waiting in the garden below. Soren in a navy suit, no tie, hands clasped in front of him. His eyes never left hers. She walked slowly toward him, each step a promise. Not of perfection, but of presence, of choosing, of believing in the impossible. The efficient spoke words she barely heard. Her world had narrowed to the man before her. When it was time to speak, she reached for his hands. "I didn't know what it meant to be truly seen until you looked at me like I was the only thing that made sense. You didn't just give me a new life, you gave me back pieces of myself I didn't know I'd lost." Soren's voice was steady. "You are the only thing I've ever found that I didn't know I needed. I walked into the wrong hotel and found the right person. I will spend every day making sure you never doubt that." There were no fireworks, no paparazzi, just vows beneath the trees and a kiss that sealed more than a promise, it sealed a home. As the evening unfurled, laughter filled the garden. Odessa danced barefoot on the flagstones while Soren watched her like he still couldn't believe she was real. Later, as the guests thinned and the music softened, they stood together beneath the lights. "Did you ever think this would be your ending?" she asked, resting her head against his shoulder. "No," he said, "but it's definitely my beginning." She looked up at him, eyes bright. "Mine too." And in the quiet of their garden, surrounded by everything they had built and everything still to come, the millionaire who wandered into the wrong hotel and the receptionist who never saw it coming began the life neither of them had planned, one built not on chance, but on choice. On presence. On love that didn't need to make sense to be real. The morning sun filtered through the gauzy curtains of their brownstone bedroom, casting soft golden stripes across the sheets tangled around them. Odessa stirred first, her hand instinctively reaching across the bed, finding Soren already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her like she was the only constant in a world that never stopped moving. "You're staring," she murmured, voice still thick with sleep. "I'm memorizing," he said, brushing a piece of hair from her cheek. "There's a difference." She blinked up at him, lips curving. "You could do that later, you know, when I'm not half asleep and drooling on the pillow. You don't drool." "I absolutely do. I've seen you sleep for months now." "Not once." "Then you're not paying attention." Soren leaned down and kissed her forehead. "I pay attention to everything about you." They didn't need to speak about what day it was. It had been circled in red on the kitchen calendar for weeks now, underlined twice by Odessa when she'd been making a grocery list, and spotted it looming at the bottom of the month. The Kingsley Foundation Annual Summit. It wasn't just a charity event. It was an international convergence of investors, engineers, policymakers, and journalists all coming together for panels, presentations, and a formal gala. And this year, for the first time, Soren wasn't attending alone. Odessa pulled herself out of bed and made her way to the closet, where the custom gown had been hanging for 2 days, still waiting for its moment. She reached for it, her fingers trailing over the fabric, and hesitated. Behind her, Soren had come up silently. "You don't have to prove anything tonight," he said gently. "I'm not trying to prove anything," she replied. "I just want to belong." He reached around her, his arms circling her waist. "You belong the moment you walk in, not because of a dress, because you're with me." She turned in his arms. "You're not worried about that I'll say something completely wrong in front of the chairman of the Aerospace Council?" He kissed her temple. "If you do, they'll finally hear something worth listening to." The gala was held in a glass-paneled event center that overlooked the Hudson River. By the time they arrived, the skyline gleamed in the distance like a city made of stars. It was a crush of tailored tuxedos and glittering gowns, but as soon as Odessa stepped out of the car, the crowd seemed to part around her, not because they recognized her, but because she was walking in on Soren Kingsley's arm, and the man who used to avoid cameras now carried himself like someone who had nothing to hide. Inside, waiters drifted through the room with silver trays, and soft classical music floated over the gentle buzz of conversation. The ballroom was all crystal, gold, and candlelight, opulent but not ostentatious. The kind of wealth that didn't scream, only whispered. Odessa kept her posture straight, her fingers laced with Soren's. She made it through the first cluster of introductions with a polite smile and steady voice. But it was when she met a woman named Dr. Lynn, head of a nonprofit that brought STEM education to underserved communities, that her nerves finally eased. They spoke for almost 20 minutes, trading ideas and laughing over shared frustrations about bureaucracy and outdated equipment. Soren watched from a distance, talking with a European investor, but his eyes never strayed far from her. When she finally returned to him, cheeks flushed with conversation, he leaned in close. "You don't just belong here," he murmured. "You elevate the room." Later in the evening, the lights dimmed slightly, and a hush fell over the crowd as the event director took the stage to introduce Soren for his keynote. He kissed Odessa's hand before stepping away, his shoulders squaring as he passed into the spotlight. She watched from the edge of the crowd, heart full in a way that felt too big for her chest. Soren's speech wasn't filled with statistics or strategy. It was about purpose, about building something that outlasted profit. About the people behind the numbers, the engineers, the dreamers, the kids in community centers designing drones from scrap. And then he said something that made her breath catch. "I used to think control meant success," he said, voice steady. "That if I could just manage every detail, I'd be safe. But I've learned that real strength comes from letting someone in, from trusting that love won't dilute your purpose, it will sharpen it." He glanced across the room, gaze locking with hers. "I met someone who reminded me of that, who reminded me that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's clarity. And it changed everything." The crowd applauded, but Odessa barely heard it. Her eyes stung and her chest ached in the best possible way. After the speech, they found each other on the balcony, away from the noise. "You didn't warn me you were going to say all that," she said, her voice thick. "I didn't plan to, it just felt right." She brushed a hand over his lapel. "I don't know what I did to deserve all of this. You loved me when I had nothing to offer but broken keycards and vending machine tea," he said. "That's worth everything." They stood there in silence, the Hudson glimmering behind them, the city alive and sprawling beneath their feet. And then he did something unexpected. He took off his watch. It was an antique Patek Philippe, gifted by his father when he closed his first major deal, something he'd never removed except to sleep. He pressed it gently into her hand. "This doesn't mean time," he said. "It means trust." Odessa stared at him. "Soren, I'm not giving you a symbol. I'm giving you my past, so we can move forward without anything held back." She closed her fingers around it, overwhelmed. When they returned home, the garden was still strung with lights from their wedding. The time had grown wild, and the cat watched them from the windowsill with disinterest. They walked barefoot through the dewy grass, no shoes, no pretense. And when they reached the center, under the same space where they had said their vows, Odessa turned to him. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what I want to do next." He raised an eyebrow. "Tell me." "I want to start something, not big, not flashy, just real. Workshops, maybe, for women who want to work in hospitality but don't have the training. I know what it's like to stand behind a front desk and feel invisible." Soren's eyes lit with something fierce and proud. "You want a space, I want a purpose. Then it's already yours." She stepped closer. "You're not going to tell me to wait until the timing's right. I've learned that the right time is whenever you say it is." He kissed her then, not softly, not carefully, but with the kind of certainty that only came from knowing you'd found the person who made the world make sense. That night, they danced in the grass. No music but the rustling of leaves and the distant hum of the city. And the next morning, they did not return to a storybook or a whirlwind. They returned to life together. They built something lasting, not from wealth or titles, but from trust, from laughter, from quiet mornings and late-night takeout and long talks that never needed to be profound to be meaningful. Their love wasn't about grand gestures anymore. It was about staying. And they stayed, always.